starting a career and starting a life in the economic environment that we're in now is very difficult. And so are we listening to those experiences and trying to figure out what the solutions could be? We talk about affordable housing and an affordable economy. As someone who's a student trying to figure out when I'm going to be able to afford buying a house or having to switch apartments because rent is continuously too high, that's also an issue.
Welcome back to Around the District. I am Nicole Brown, and we're here again with Armando Montero. Armando, let's continue the conversation on if you are elected to the state capitol as a state representative for Legislative District 12. Politics can be polarizing.
Yes.
You know that, right?
Yes.
So how do you plan to work collectively across party lines to get things done for your district?
Yeah, I think the approach that I've taken in the past 5 years in office has always been focused on what matters, and that's finding collaborative solutions to do what's right by, for school board, for students, but at the state legislature for, all the citizens of Arizona. And I think that comes with being able to put kind of the personal politics or personal vendettas that we might have aside and really focus on what matters. And I think part of what the past several years, I think ever since the pandemic, I remember the first 2 years on the board, there was this mindset of, if you don't agree with me, then you haven't listened to me. And I think that that's misguided, because my approach has always been like, hey, I'll listen to you and my door's always open. Let's have a conversation, because maybe I'll understand things that maybe I didn't understand before, and maybe you'll understand things from my perspective that maybe you have not understood before. And we may end up agreeing to disagree on certain issues, but at least we had a dialogue and at least we had a conversation. And so, my goal, especially at the legislature and even the past 5 years, has always been like, I'm not there to be this flashy social media presence. I'm not there to get headlines in the news. I want to be there to get work done. And if you focus on Tempe Union, like, we're not in the news a lot. We're not, in these big fights publicly a lot because, we made an intentional effort to not do that, because we want to be able to put our heads down and just do the work and focus on students. And I think the results that we've seen in Tempe Union have shown that. And so especially in a very polarized environment like the legislature, I would hope to be able to, open my door and find common ground with Republicans across the aisle as well. I'm sure there's many issues that we can find some sort of common agreement on, but that starts with step one, having a conversation. And so that would be my approach.
Well, let's hope. Because we've noticed over the last, 8, 9, 10 years, people have drawn a line in the sand on whatever side they stand on. And to your point, if you don't agree with me, then you're one of them, or you're woke, or whatever term they want to use, that's derogatory towards somebody opposite of what they believe. So I feel like you would, if elected, you would have a lot going in, like, you're young, you're a Democrat, and
Yes.
if the Republicans hold the majority, that's going to be a concern. Now, I personally have been downtown at some of those meetings, and I've listened and watched, and they're not going to be nice.
Yes.
So in the event that they don't want to come share in the sandbox and play well together, what would you do?
Yeah, it's nothing new. I have been on the receiving end of all kinds of different not fun rhetoric before, especially first joining the school board young, but also just being on a school board in 2025. A lot of us get that kind of talk. And I think, if that's something that wants to be brought up, I think I at least have a record to prove on, to go on, of saying, like, I have experience. I have more experience governing than many of the people that might be down there in the first place. I've been making decisions. I've had constituents to be accountable to. I've dealt with public budgets for 5 years. These are things that, having to navigate policy making and implementing policy and writing policy and understanding all the things that come with that. I do have that level of experience. And so, part of it is just coming and having thick skin. And that's something that I've been able to accumulate over the past 5 years. But at the same time, it's always kind of been, let them.
Yeah.
I think if that's what they want to focus on, and, I focus on doing the work that matters, I think that shows, especially to the people that are watching, who's there to do the work. And so in many ways, I think, and the approach I've taken is just let them.
Well, I think that's a great approach. You talked about, having a thick skin and having to kind of just let it roll off your back.
Hmm.
But you really want to try to bridge the gap
Hmm.
between the two sides and, bring everybody together. But what leadership skills specifically do you think that you have, or what qualities in leadership that you have that you think would be very beneficial to being elected as a state legislator?
Yeah, and I think I would go back to what I mentioned earlier. I think, especially once you get to a certain level, like at the state legislature, I think we see it even a lot at the federal level, where a lot of what's being done in committees and on the floor, it's for show. Right? People are trying to get a flashy headline. They're trying to get fundraising for their reelection or for whatever office they're running for next. Uh, and that takes away from doing good work. And so I think that, if, again, my approach would generally be like, I'm not going to be there speaking to make headlines. If I'm speaking, it's because, I want to get something done. And so hopefully that would at least open up a door for people to recognize as like, hey, if you come and work with me, I'm not going to stab you in the back and try to make a headline out of it. Like, I genuinely want to find common ground, whatever, wherever it might be. Obviously, there's going to be certain issues and certain things that we're not going to have any common ground on, right?
Right.
Because there are certain things and certain issues and certain values that I'm not willing to compromise on. But where we can find common ground, I think is where we can go from there. And so, yeah.
I agree with that a lot. I think though, I have hopes. If elected,
Yes.
you're able to bring some of these people, into that middle ground a little bit, at least to have a conversation.
Mhm.
But I think what's really irrelevant, you said it earlier in one of our conversations, like the younger folks and having a diversity in
Yeah.
thought, and a different voice and not doing things. This is always the way that things are done, which I personally think in the state of Arizona is one of the reasons why the Democrats have such a hard time getting things done,
Mhm.
is that we want to focus on what we always have done, and we recycle the same people through the election cycle. So someone like you coming in with a different voice
Mhm.
is relevant, right? And
Yeah.
important. So how would you engage younger folks, younger voters like yourself, or people around you to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, while I think obviously running at 24 right now and 25 by the election is something that is important to have that diversity, I'm not just running on the fact that I'm young. And I think that, um,
24, 25 when he's elected, hopefully.
yes. Um, and I think, part of it is just one, obviously, yes, it's important to bring that perspective that I think my generation and young people, especially as we're seeing more and more young people becoming a larger part of the voting bloc. I think part of the problem is a lot of the rhetoric around politics and what's actually happening in our legislative chambers isn't reflective of what young people are saying. And so I think, and even just from personal experience, I got involved very young when I was 16 years old. Almost everyone that was involved at the time, nowadays, they're not involved anymore. And part of it is because I think there's this level of apathy of like, I put all this work in for what? There's nothing on the receiving end because we put so much work into something just to be shot down. Right. And I think we hear a lot from, not just Democrats, but Republicans as well, is like, oh, we value young people and young involvement, but is there really a level of actual authentic engagement with that? What level are they involved in the decision making process when you're, you know, not just saying you want to listen to young people when you're campaigning, but when you actually get in office, are they in your office? Are you listening to them and getting their perspective on things? So many of the issues that I think we're facing right now in Arizona, I think young people can have a unique and
Mhm.
different perspective on that. Um, Education obviously is a big one. As someone who's been through our public education system recently, that's a unique and different perspective. We talk about affordable housing and an affordable economy. As someone who's a student trying to figure out when I'm going to be able to afford buying a house or having to switch apartments because rent is continuously too high, that's also an issue. As starting a career and starting a life in the economic environment that we're in now is very difficult. And so are we listening to those experiences and trying to figure out what the solutions could be?
So, would you go to the college campuses and engage those younger voters, like ASU
Mm.
or NAU? What's the other one? There's
U of
another
A.
one. U of A. U of A. Um, and then kind of talk about midterms
Mhm.
and why it's important to get out and vote during the midterms. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, Well, to your first question, yes. I think part of my job and responsibility, if I got elected, was to be able to listen to everybody, right? And that doesn't include just young people, but young people are an important part of that
Right.
conversation. Even the ones that aren't able to vote, right? Especially like at the high school level or the middle school level, they also have a level of experience that we can listen to as well. And I think having been knocking on doors, even the past couple cycles, and now running for state rep, not just young people, but even people that have historically voted or are registered to vote and have voted in the past, they're kind of like, why should I even vote? My
Or
vote's not
never
going to make a
voted,
difference.
or
Right.
never who
Right.
never thought their vote mattered.
Right. Exactly. It's the same thing. And I think we see that where it's like, it doesn't matter who's in power, nothing changes.
Right.
And I think that we have to be able to, hopefully, as if the Democrats can take the majority in the legislature, be able to show the policies that we're implementing are having a positive impact on Arizona families. We're not here to just be anti them, but like, here's what we want to actually achieve and get things done. We want to put our heads down. We want to do the work. We want to make positive change. And so I think if we're able to authentically engage, again, this doesn't just apply to young people, but I think young people specifically have a higher level of apathy. I think we've seen even just in the turnout levels of young people, especially in midterm elections, because you don't have the big flashy presidential election or especially here in Arizona, we're not going to have a Senate race going on. We don't have those top of the ticket races that you get a lot of news coverage on. And this is really, we're trying to understand where local government comes in. And I've always said at the doors, especially like school board is really where the rubber meets the road. We're dealing with families and their kids. That's where you get a lot of emotion. And so we're dealing with those on the ground issues. Your school boards, your city councils, the state legislature, like these are the elected officials that really have more of an impact on your life than the president does.
Right. Even SRP board, SRP board would have an impact on your life because it's going to increase your utilities if you have SRP, right? So like people don't understand how important those midterm elections actually, it's bigger than the presidential one because it actually has more of a direct impact on our everyday lives, which is why it sounds like you're running to make sure you can make some kind of impact.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And I again, ever since even running before school board, I think, a student in the district, like I didn't know who my school board members were, who the superintendent was, what a school board did, yet they were making decisions that impacted my everyday life. And I think that's the same thing applies to all the other, like for city councils, for example, and state legislators. Like what are they doing to impact your life positively? I'm sure there's so many decisions that are being made that people just aren't aware of that are impacting their life in some way. That
I'm sure Gilbert is, because they're right now worrying about their rates going up. So I'm sure they will right now.
Yes.
Well, I want to ask you then for your community impact and your vision. How will you stay connected to your school district and community while serving if you're elected to the state as a state legislator?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, having a level of being in the district and still being involved is super important, right? I don't think my job stops at just showing up and taking votes at the legislature. But the other part of the job, especially in the part of the year that we're not in session, is to spend time in the community, right? Talking to families, going to our local small businesses, seeing what's out there, what's in the district, doing school visits, talking to our principals and our administrators and the superintendents about what issues are the school districts facing and where can the state help them. Because I think that informs the way that we are advocating down at the state legislature. And I'll still be, my term isn't up on the school board until 2028, so I'll still be on the school board.
About that. Are you going to stay on? Okay.
Yes, I want to make that very clear. I'm going to stay on the school board. And there's been some questions, but yeah, no, I'm absolutely staying on the school board. So I'll still have that level of involvement as well to be able to understand what's happening on the ground, but also at the statewide level. And I think that's a good experience to have both ways.
Great. Well, what would you like our viewers to know about you and going into this election cycle? Now that we're December?
It's December,
it's December 3rd. So like next year midterm. So we have less than a year. What would you like them to know about you and why they should vote for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is public service, I think has been.
If you're an LD12, by the way.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
If
you're an LD12. Yes. Public service has been my passion for quite some time. And I think that's where I know that especially since going to college and graduating and being on the school board and going to law school, I think has kind of solidified the fact that I know that this is where I want to be. And I think being able to see the impact that just one or two people or three people can make in these positions, I think is huge. And so, we've had a lot of positive impact over the 5 years on the school board, I hope. And I think being able to take that to the next level is really why I decided to jump into the race. And other than that, like, I'm an open book. My email and phone number are on the Secretary of State's website. I'm not afraid of people emailing and calling or texting and asking questions. And even if elected, I take the same approach. Like, my door will always be open. And we may not agree on everything, and I might take a vote that you might disagree with, but at the minimum, I'll be there to explain why and listen to your concerns and listen to different perspectives as well.
Thank you. It's been great having this conversation. I think, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
In the upcoming election. Thank you for joining us. My name is Nicole Brown. This is Around the District. Like, subscribe, share, or whatever else you do on social media. And thank you for joining us.